Welcome to the podcast about investing in startups, where existing investors can learn how to get the best deal possible. And those that have never before invested in startups can learn the keys to success from the venture experts. Your host is Nick Moran, and this is The Full Ratchet.
Welcome back to TFR for another edition of Investor Stories. On this segment, the experts talk about a startup that failed and the causes of that failure. Here's the segment called Post-Mortems. On today's special segment, we have Michael Cardamone of Acceleprise. Michael, can you tell us a story about a portfolio company that's failed and why it failed?
Companies fail for a number of different reasons. Obviously, like product market fit is kind of often one of those. I think the challenging ones is when it comes from sort of unforced errors that causes them. So maybe they have a good product and some early customers and it seems promising. And then there are, founder issues where like the founders aren't getting along. And then, a founder ends up leaving but they still have a lot of the cap table and there's not, then you have to rely on them being like reasonable and rational around like how do you reduce equity in the cap table and like things like that. We've seen firsthand kind of tear a company apart when they seemingly had good early momentum. And so I think like really trying to be cognizant of who your founders are, how well do you know them, how long have you worked together is important because you don't want those sort of things to cause a company to fail if you don't have to, like if everything else is working.
Are there ways that you can kind of get out in front of that, like early on, or is it just kind of you let it play out and sometimes,
Yeah, I mean, so we actually we'll look for early signs of founder issues in the cohort because they're working out of our space. And so even things like, do we see someone rolling their eyes or like, are they not communicating or are they cutting each other off? And we'll address it head on early on so that we get to the bottom of like, are there issues here? What are the issues and try to resolve it. But just like any relationship, like it's all about communication and transparency and building trust. And to the extent we can help facilitate that during a program, if we're seeing early signs of an issue, we will. But I think it's all about just like making sure you're communicating consistently and clearly with everyone.
On today's special segment, we have Jim Kim of Builders. Jim, can you tell us a story about a portfolio company that failed and why it failed?
I have been part of quite a few companies that have failed, and it could be something as simple as market conditions. You just didn't time it right. It could be an entrepreneur. I had an entrepreneur. I won't name this company, but being in this business 12 years, you see a lot of things, and I think part of why I said venture is a bit of an apprenticeship is you have to be able to understand how to fix the situation or get out of the situation in a way that treats your investors in the best possible way, treats the entrepreneurs with respect, and is ethically aligned with your own beliefs. There was a situation where I invested in a company and the CEO, as a offhanded comment, but a comment that he ended up making more and more over time. It was a founder that basically said the CEO that the VCs put in place, he wanted to shoot.
Huh.
And this is a company that was kind of somewhat in the Midwest. And so we had to take that very seriously. We ended up, having to post security guards at the door.
Oh, wow.
Had to escort the founder out. And then in the process of, going through a little bit more of the detail, we realized that this founder was massively paranoid and had installed spy cameras above the computer of every employee in the company.
Whoa.
So we talked to the IT person. We're like, holy cow, how did this possibly happen? And so, there's sometimes a fine line between crazy and genius.
It's true.
And you want to back the entrepreneurs that are geniuses, but in that process, you might end up backing a couple crazies. So it's tough.
Yeah, I can imagine. I had an LP come to me that looked up some online data and some reviews on, I can't remember the website, but like employee reviews, right? And this founder has been enormously successful, serial founder. But there were some challenging reviews from from subordinates that he received in the past about his level of intensity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this LP was questioning, you really want to back a guy that, has maligned some employees because he's hard to work for. And I said, well, I'll look at it and I'll research it. But sometimes in this industry, there's some people that get ruffled, by these founders. These founders have a mission and they're focused, and not all of them are, the most measured and, delicate folks when it comes to leadership. Some of these people are hard chargers and either get on board or get out of the way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's ultimately, as I mentioned, there's a fine line, right? You want to be working with it takes massive amounts of guts to go try and tackle an industry that is resistant to change, right?
Yep.
And you have to live in somewhat of a reality distortion field because you're taking on the hardest job in the world. And I have immense respect for founders who go after a really hard problem and say, I'm going to try and solve it. And I love, God bless them, they work their asses off.
Yeah.
Sometimes though, you just have to, when you're beating your head against the wall, right? Maybe you just have to take a step back. And ideally you're working with your investors to say, you know what, this ain't working. We're ruffling a lot of feathers. You're seeing it now where some founders are falsifying results or falsifying numbers, and you just don't want to get to that point, right?
No.
where you are so consumed by winning that you're going to lose your moral compass, right? That's the type of thing where you have to be able to, as an investor, you have to just say, I need to stop this, right? There might be the inkling of a great platform of technology here, but this person is not necessarily looking at things with clarity anymore. And so as a team, we need to figure out how to make a change here. So this has an opportunity to win. Mm-hmm. But it's hard, right? It's hard having those discussions. It's hard coming to that determination. And, I still have a lot to learn in that process as well. But again, ultimate respect for people who are going after hard industries. It's how the world is going to become better.
On this special segment, we have Jason Calacanis. Jason, can you tell us a story about a portfolio company that failed and why it failed?
Yeah. Oh, God. How much time do we have? This could be like a whole podcast. Welcome to the Fail Podcast, where we deconstruct stuff that hit the fan. Yeah. I had a camera company that built a camera that was 3 or 4 years ahead of, Dropcam and Nest. And the founder, because they were doing hardware and software, wasn't able to ever get enough capital to market all the stuff. It wound up getting sold in a fire sale. We had the same thing happen with a smoke detector. So it was like hardware. And in both of those cases, it was so hard to finish the product while marketing the product because the products were very complex, I guess, and hardware was very hard back then. It still is. Mm-hmm. And that's where, I got a real aversion to, consumer hardware. It just feels like it's really hard to make that work without a large amount of runway. I think the Ring doorbell was an example of that because Doorbot, the first one, crashed and burned and was really hard. And they finally were able to get a big amount of funding in that then let them take a long view of it. But man, hardware startups are so hard. Hardware as a service, a lot easier. So we have a company called Density does people counting. And because they're charging for, enterprise software that has a hardware component, that to me is a lot better because the problem with one-off sales is you start the next month at zero. And the great strength of subscription-based business, whether it's software subscriptions like Slack or meditation like Calm and Consumer or Netflix or Disney Plus, is you generally start the next month with 105% or 95% of what you had last month. You start next year at 110% or 90%, depending on how good your product is of last year. Whereas if you're an ad-based business or you're selling Nest cams or whatever it happens to be, you're starting at zero.
Yep.
And that makes it hard. It has to be a really exceptional product with a flywheel going. And so to the extent you can get subscription revenue in your somehow as a component of your business. And I think I just read somewhere casually that Xboxes are going to be sold for $20 a month or something over 4 years. as opposed to you buying it up front.
Not surprised.
This is how consumer psychology is really interesting. Calm used to be like, I think $10 to buy the app one time. And then it went to $10 a month. Consumption went up. And you should think about that. Well, that makes no sense. If I pay you $10 a month, I'm paying $120 a year. And if I pay 10 one time, I get it for life for 100 months or whatever it is or more. But when we say subscribe, what's inherent in subscribing to something is that you can unsubscribe, and you will unsubscribe at some point in all likelihood. It might be 10 years from now. Who knows? And it gives you this psychological freedom to trial stuff.
Right.
Well, I subscribe, but I can unsubscribe and get my money back. And so making it easy to unsubscribe is one of those things that's like a superpower play. Like at inside.com, when we send people their monthly bill every month and let them one click unsubscribe, so that I think we do. I know we send the bill every month. I'm not sure if it's one click, but I'll make sure it's one click. Or maybe it's got to be 2 clicks so they don't accidentally click it. But anyway, making it easy to unsubscribe, because Stratechery does that as well. You get your bill every month, you get unsubscribe with a couple clicks. That's like the power move. And then the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal make you like jump through hoops. So I don't like subscribing to those businesses that make you call them on the phone to unsubscribe.
Yeah, it's so difficult to get out.
Oh, it's brutal. So brutal.
Is this why you passed on Tavala, Consumer Hardware? I know you had David Rabby on your podcast probably a couple of years ago now.
Yeah, consumer, I'm just not, I don't have the appetite for consumer hardware.
Got it.
I think it's a race to the bottom, given how quickly the Chinese copy everything and put like a really cheap version of it online. Yeah. It works for Apple when you have stores and a loyal customer base who are locked in with moats because of iPhoto and everything else, iMessage. They can come out with AirPods and they make a credible product, a credible margin. They got the distribution locked up. They got the customer base locked up. It works. But, even Google struggled with their hardware investments. Amazon has struggled with hardware. If Amazon and Google have a hard time making it work, it's really hard for consumers too. I mean, and if you look at the outcomes of the best hardware, Fitbit, GoPro, incredible, right? Like $2 billion exits.
Yeah.
$3 billion. I mean, I think that's why Peloton is different. Peloton is really about the subscription, not about the hardware.
Yeah.
And I am in love with my Peloton tread. I have the treadmill and I am addicted to it.
Oh, the treadmill version. Got it.
I don't like biking. It hurts my knees, but I love running. For some reason, I just enjoy it more. I just think the Peloton is just such a wonderful experience. The gamification, the community, the classes, the software, the hardware, it just all works together. And I feel like you're just paying, and I think that's the way they should sell it. They should sell it for $100 and not let you buy it up front. You should just buy the treadmill for $100 a month and it's paid off in whatever number of years. And you get a new one every 6 years.
There you go. It's like
instead of making people pay.
Yeah.
I think Peloton is going to be a money printing machine.
I think it already is to some degree.
Yeah. Well, people don't believe it. They don't believe the story. So again, that's back to the WeWork thing. When things blow up, everybody's like scrutinizing stuff. Yeah. And as a founder, as an investor and a founder, we should welcome it. We should welcome the scrutiny, because if we're investing in the right companies, it will value the best companies even higher, because they're the ones that are weakest will be cut and people won't want to invest in them.
That will conclude this installment of Investor Stories. If you're enjoying the program and would like to see it continue, take a moment and leave a 5-star review in iTunes. Also, if you'd like updates on new content from TFR, as well as the top 10 VC articles every week, go to fullratchet.net and sign up for the newsletter. Okay, that will wrap things up for today. Until next time, over-prepare, choose carefully, and invest confidently. Thanks for joining me.